It's fitting that when we leave the old year behind, we enter into a new cycle, and we probably want to know what's going to happen and what we can do to make it better. Tarot cards are one way a lot of people do that. Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff, and Joe the Scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn, and...
I'm Joe.
What do you know about tarot cards?
I know that they're pretty boring when other people are getting theirs read, but it's pretty interesting when you get your own read.
Okay, that's fair. So tarot cards started out as a card game called Tarocchini. By the late 18th century, French occultists started making claims about the history and meaning of the cards. That led to the creation of some custom decks for use in divination through tarot card readings. But up until then, it was just a card game.
It was just fun?
It was just
all fun.
It wasn't even, you weren't trying to predict the future or anything. You're just playing a card game like you'd play any card game.
Oh, okay.
Like those regular playing cards that you might use for bridge or Go Fish, or I don't know what card games there are. Canasta, is that a card game? Tarot has 4 suits. You know, in regular cards, it's, what is it? Clubs, hearts.
4.
There's clubs, hearts. I don't know what they are.
It's 4, right?
Yeah,
Clubs,
I don't know what.
Cards, spades, and diamonds.
Okay.
And then there's 2 colors.
Yes.
And then it's like 10 cards plus 4 in each.
Face cards. Yeah. So just like that, tarot has 4 suits, and that varies by region around the world. But we're just going to focus on the cards in the United States.
Like pentacles, coins, whatever. The distinction between the different elements.
Those are the suits. Yes, that's like hearts and clubs and diamonds.
Yeah, and they have the numbers.
Yes. So in the United States, the tarot cards that are commonly used are wands, swords, cups, and pentacles. There are no coins. I don't know.
These are just a substitute for the other cards, right?
Well, they were originally.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, way back when, it was like not as standardized. You would have the queen and the king and the jack and whatever. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense at some point there would be like an evolution and different, offshoots.
Mm-hmm. So in each of those suits, there are also 4 face cards: king, queen, knight, and page. So that's very similar to regular playing cards.
I suppose there is, isn't there?
Those sets, the sets that are the 4 suits with their 10 cards, and then they have the 4 face cards, that's called the minor arcana. But the way that it differs from regular playing cards is that they have an additional set of cards, 22 cards to be exact, and that's called the major arcana. And those cards range from the sun to death or the tower. You've seen those. We actually have discussed that. Mm-hmm. So that's what tarot cards are. That's all they are. They're just cards. Those early French occultists claimed that tarot cards had links to ancient Egypt, Kabbalah, the Indic Tantra, or I Ching, and those claims have been frequently repeated. But there's absolutely no evidence that tarot cards were anything other than something that was invented in Italy, northern Italy, in the mid-15th century. There's no historical evidence of any significant use of tarot cards for divination until the late 18th century. So this is a relatively modern thing. Even though people like to say this is ancient, blah, 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 it's really not. It's really a modern thing. So historians have described Western views of the tarot pack as, this is a quote, "the subject of the most successful propaganda campaign ever launched. An entire false history and false interpretation of the tarot pack was concocted by the occultists, and it is all but universally believed." End quote.
Wow.
But I think that, just like with the Ouija board or remote viewing, the power isn't in the tool. The power is in the person yielding the tool. So someone without belief or the gift or the skill, they won't get the same results as someone who has those abilities.
So that's why you need like the psychic to do your card reading.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily what we generally call a psychic, but I think that there's something that goes along with it. When I have done it in the past, now I haven't done it in decades, really, very much. You know, I played around with it. Christina gave me a whole bunch of cards for Christmas a few years ago, And I have cards that Karen, my brother's girlfriend, not his current wife, had gifted me many years ago. And I used to use them a lot more. But in the past few decades, I haven't done much. But when I used to do it, it was almost like you lay them out and they each have a meaning. You know, there's usually a book that goes along with them. Or if you don't get a book with them, you have to go and find a book. And there's a meaning to each of those cards. And each of those cards, where they're placed when you lay them out, will change how you would interpret that meaning. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if you put a card in a location where it's supposed to mean your future, you know, what's going to happen in the future, mm-hmm. and it says something like there's the end of something and the beginning of something else, you know, there's going to be some mm-hmm. big upheaval, that would mean different than if it was in the past, in something that is in the position in your layout of something that's already happened.
So let's suppose that tarot cards in their modern incarnation never existed, and you had a plaque of playing card, or you went to a person who was like, had this ability, maybe they don't know it, but, and they got a plaque of playing cards, and they just said like, whatever we put here in this zone means X, whatever we put here means whatever. And then you put them down and whatever. It's not like, oh, there's some magical meaning of this placement and these cards and the images on the cards. And, you know, it's like you're interpreting something that, like, you put them down, right? Mm-hmm. The person like touches the cards and they put them down, face down. And then the reader interprets, mm-hmm. and it's the interpretation that,
yes.
So you could like take a rabbit and cut it open, spread its entrails,
and say,
and
this
then
means
interpret.
This, or reading tea leaves, or
so
whatever.
In that sense, it has nothing to do with the cards.
Exactly. Just like I think when you play around with a Ouija board, it has nothing to do with the Ouija board. People who are terrified of a Ouija board, like there's demons just seething in the you know, cardboard and paper of the mm-hmm. thing. That's absurd. If you get any message that is verifiable or is meaningful out mm-hmm. of doing the Ouija board or doing the tarot cards, it is something that you've picked up and you've used those as a mm-hmm. tool to stimulate your thought process. That's mm-hmm. all it is. As far as I'm concerned, that's absolutely all it is. The magic is in the reader, not in the tool. Mm-hmm. And there's a responsibility, I think, that goes along with it. So the way it happens is you hand the deck of cards to a person and you say, the person who wants the reading, and you say, shuffle the cards. And hopefully they do not bend them back on themselves and destroy your cards. They just carefully and gently shuffle them around and move them around and turn them around and, you know, move them around. And they're supposed to be focusing on the question they have mm-hmm. to ask. So if there was some psychic thing going on right then, I suppose the reader would be able to pick that up. But I think that it also serves a purpose of putting the person being read into a state of mind where they're thinking about something in particular. They're not just letting their mind go blah, blah, blah. They're, you know, they're focused on...
Well, so, okay. If you just had an automated, like, machine shuffle the cards, and then the reader puts the cards down, there would be presumably no input from the person who... the person who's getting their thing read, right?
And again, it would be the reader interpreting something, because you'll notice when you look at the meaning of the cards, they're very vague.
Yeah.
And so...
Which is helpful because you can then interpret a lot of different things.
So just like newspaper astrology things, you know, that tell you what the day is going to be like, you could read the wrong one and say, oh, that really applies to me. And then you realize, oh, that wasn't mine. Mm-hmm. And you read another one and that applies to you too. And you read another one, that applies to you too. Mm-hmm. Because they're really vague and most people can apply those. When you get a reading, if the feedback you get from the reader is very vague, they're probably they've memorized the cards and they're not really reading the situation. They don't really have a gift or a skill. They may have a good memory.
So in that sense, if you just crack open the book and read what it says on each of the things, you're not reading it.
Right.
Or you're not interpreting it.
Right. So you're not giving a reading.
So
you're
it's
literally reading.
So in the worst case, the person who's getting their thing read puts it in a shuffling machine, and then the reader puts the cards out, and then flips them over and reads from the book, nothing has happened.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Unless there's like some other
thing that the reader has some other skill or some other.
Well, so presumably like if there was a paranormal thing going on and it didn't even matter who touched it or who read it, it had meaning just because it was the situation, the implication. That it like if you're saying, oh, it could be a supernatural thing, that's still on the table, even in the case that no one touches the cards. It's like on a computer, like the computer is both doing the reading and shuffling them, selecting the cards. It's entirely the computer, no input from anybody. If there's a paranormal thing going on, yes, you still could potentially. Okay,
so again, let's liken it to a pencil. A pencil in the hand of an artist can draw a photographic image of a human being. The pencil in the hand of an ape will just be scribbles.
It's interesting because it's like, okay, cold reading. Is it cold reading? Where somebody goes up and just starts interpreting things and gets it more accurate. It's sort of like if you had some problem in your life and you went and got a cold reading, and it's like, this is eye-opening because I didn't even know this, Like, regardless if there's something paranormal going on, that could actually be useful.
Yes.
Like, oh, here's just random subjects I'm interpreting from my life from these cards. And then this cold reader there's this feedback loop.
Yes. And that is absolutely true. It doesn't actually have to be something paranormal. It can be something as simple as that.
So you don't think there's anything paranormal?
I think that some people have a gift to interpret beyond what the cards say, beyond what is apparent, without doing cold reading. Let me give you an example. Years ago, maybe before you were born, probably most certainly before you were born, I had these cards, and they were animal totem cards, and there was another set too that were also Native American influenced. And I did them all the time. I did them for myself. I did them for my kids. I did them for other family members. And the word got out, and people started showing up at our house asking me to read their cards. I did not know these people, but obviously in some way I was giving them information that made them believe that this was accurate, that I had some kind of insider information, and the advice was sound, and it was a regular thing. And they would bring me money and gifts to have me read these cards. And this is what it felt like to me. And I did rely on what it said in the book. I read the thing. I relied on that. But it was almost like if you're dreaming, like you're remembering a dream. Like I kind of let my mind go blank when I was looking at it, and there'd be images, and that sounds so stupid, but it was like remembering a dream. It was like half pieces of things and ideas, and I would just say them, and they were right. What is that? Is that psychic ability? Is that reading somebody's body language? I don't think so, because I wasn't asking questions. I was just saying the stuff that was coming in my head.
Presumably you have some information about them from just looking at them. Like you do have some, like you're using your knowledge of and your experience of life to know, like if somebody comes in disheveled, that there's a reason for them being disheveled.
I don't think it was anything like that. There was one guy, I can't remember exactly what the reading was, because, we're talking 30 plus years ago, but it was a horrible reading, and horrible in that there was going to be some cataclysmic upheaval in his life. And I saw that, and I got a really sick feeling about it. But I said to him, it could be that you're going to change jobs. It could be that a relationship will change, but something big is going to change. It wasn't very long after that he died.
Okay, how about this? If that guy came in and he was like nervous at some level, or like...
Oh, he didn't die from sickness. He died like in a car accident.
Yeah, but so like if you notice, like even at a subconscious level, oh, this guy, he has some trouble in his life, then it's not totally unreasonable to say like, oh, there's going to be upheaval in his life.
So does that make it less valid that you're at a sub-level you're picking up stuff?
So how about this? Let's say I'm an investor and I go to and get my cards read. And they say, you're going to make it big somehow. And then I go, and when I'm choosing my next investments, there's one and it just stands out. And I say, the cards, if the cards are right, then I should go hard on this and I'll win it big. So you go hard on it and you win it big. There is a definite meaning there. There's a value there, right? Mm-hmm. And presumably it could be like, oh, that was a failure, but then you have some other success in life. Then there's still value there. If it's repeatable, if you could then reliably go back and say, how about I get another one? And then it says, oh no, it's going to be horrible. I think that, that's really valuable. I'm not even sure what, like a situation, like if you go and it says you're going to win big and then the next 10 years are just normal life, then what value was it?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's really completely unethical for anyone to say to you, you're going to win big, put all your money on the stocks.
Well, I mean, it's be like, you get the king of coins and this, then the next card's like, oh, lavish, like.
Okay, but that's not how it works, because
it's much more abstract than that.
And a good reader would say something wonderful is going to happen. Something you're
well,
gonna
so if it said future, something fucking amazing's going to happen, and then the next 20 years are the most boring parts of your life, was there value there?
Well, I think the biggest value is that you missed an opportunity to look at how amazing it was to be alive, because it's amazing to be alive,
so that brings
to
up
create
the
something.
second kind of value, which is it makes you look at things differently.
Yes. Okay, so that brings up another point. If you have somebody in front of you and you're reading their cards and you see loss and dissolution of something, and it looks like, you're getting a real sense that there's going to be a breakup of a relationship or betrayal or anything like that, you do not say to somebody, your girlfriend's betraying you, she's cheating on you, you need to get out of that relationship.
Yeah.
Because you have...
It's, what do they call that?
Horrible?
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and it's, even if it were true, it's not your place to say that. Your place is to give them something to help them
saying,
look deeper into their own life.
Oh, there's gonna be cataclysm. It's gonna be awful. Whatever. I don't know what that means. It's up to you, Then even that could influence things.
But I did not say there was going to be cataclysm. I told him there was going to be a cataclysmic shift. Something big was going to change.
Yeah, so a good reader would then say, like, oh, it's not necessarily like something bad's going to happen.
Yes, then I'm sure
it could go either way. It's like death, future, death, the king of skulls.
Okay, if you get the death card, it doesn't mean someone's going to die.
It doesn't mean that someone's going to die or anything necessarily horrible is going to happen.
Right.
So, like, you could say, oh, well, this tarot card that has like a rotting corpse and Grim Reaper floating around, and it means rebirth.
Yes, it does.
So, again, it's like, if I had a magic deck of tarot cards, it's magic, explicitly paranormal. Okay. And I lay the future card down, and on it says, in 2 years, you're going to go to a casino and you're going to win $5 million.
You are the most capitalistic person I have ever known.
Well, consider, that's really explicitly useful.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yes.
And it's generally useful to have something that forces you to look at your situation differently.
Right.
So
maybe in the reality of what tarot cards say and what you can get out of them, it would say something like, you might get the impression that they should re-examine what they're doing and possibly explore new avenues of what pursuits. They should be doing something different in their life.
Yeah. But so consider this. let's say you just go up to a random person on the street and you don't even ask them, oh, tarot cards, whatever. You just hold the card up and say, re-examine your life.
The police would be called because they would say that you were assaulting them.
Really, that's advice valid for anyone at any time.
It is.
So it almost is like the question of the meaning of meaning. There is meaning in going up, like getting your cards read, and it forces you to think about things differently. But is it meaningful that you didn't just go to the mirror and say, I should think about things differently?
Perhaps the reader has developed a skill to be able to give advice using those prompts on the cards so that to help you think outside of your situation.
Again, it's tarot cards, whatever. But it's like the act of tarot reading is just a device for this life coach to help you.
Maybe. Maybe not, though. Maybe there is something to it, because there are lots of people who have had readings generally from not from like the tarot card readers on TikTok. That's a whole different animal that is shameful and embarrassing. But they've had readings and they felt like they were given specific information about it in detail about situations that they were currently in or that they entered into shortly afterwards. Lots of people. And all you have to do is Google proven tarot readings or anything like that.
So again, so now it's like we're on a sliding scale going from something that is generally useful and definitively useful to something that may be specifically useful, but only maybe, And on the one side, it's things that are definitively true. I mean, if you agree that reality exists, then it's true. On the other hand, you have like paranormal things, which are not necessarily true.
Do you consider being a psychic paranormal?
Yes.
Why?
Well, okay, paranormal is a very hard thing to define, but I would say it like this. There's a modern culture of physicalism. That means belief in a physical universe, and that's reality, all of reality. And that means humans are simulated by this physical reality, and everything can be modeled by physical interactions like that. That doesn't mean necessarily like, oh, you have a soul and it's like you're telepathically moving the soul around and whatever. That could be physically modeled within that universe, but it's not within the current physical models of the universe.
Before germs were discovered.
Yeah, definitely. That's totally valid. The idea, like, oh, there's these little things and that was not part of the physical models of the universe.
So that would have been considered like witchcraft, that you're sending out some evil thing.
What I would say is paranormal is things that aren't
currently recognized,
currently physically modeled. And it helps if you can reproduce an experimental results. Forget science. Science is a rhetorical art. It's about convincing other people. If I can do this thing always, and they can do the same thing always and get always the same result, that's just super convincing.
Here's why that doesn't work.
Okay.
Here's why it doesn't work. Okay, maybe I can do it always. And so I tell you, and you can't do it always. So that you think that invalidates what I've done. But it doesn't. Because just like if I have a pencil and you have a pencil and you can draw a beautiful picture and I take the pencil and I just scribble because it's not my skill. So the fact that one person can do something and another person cannot does not invalidate the skill that the person who can do does.
Well, okay, consider this. Let's say you're particularly you are very goal-oriented, and you just one day trying different things out, you go to a tarot card reader, and they're a very good one, and they give you a reading, and then you use the results of that reading to better yourself somehow. Like, so let's say you go to the casino and you make more money than you came in with, then you can then use that as a strategy to increase your chances above break-even point. You can use that to make more money.
Okay.
And I use money because it's very quantifiable. You go in with $100, you come out with $120. So now you're repeatedly going to this tarot card reader and using them to make money, tons and tons of money. And you can see, oh my God, that may actually happen. But if it can happen, people would certainly immediately take advantage of it to do just that, exactly as I was talking about.
Okay, so if I was a tarot reader and I had the ability to say, I will direct somebody into a casino to a particular slot machine and they will win big money, it would be me that went into the casino. It would not be them.
Okay. Imagine somebody comes into your tarot card thing and you know you're a good tarot card reader. You give them their thing, they go out and they come back in a week and then they go, and you don't talk to them about or maybe they're giving you a story and who knows if it's true or not. But in the meantime, they're going to the casino and when you said life's going to be great in the future, they bet big money. And when you say life's going to be terrible in the future, they don't go to the casino. You know what I mean?
That is not how it works. That is totally not how it works.
So let's say that's not how it works. You can't use the cards supernaturally to, you can't strategize with them.
Well, maybe you can. I don't know.
How about this? Let's say somebody comes in, you're a good tarot card reader, you give them their cards, they say, life's grand and awesome, future, big success, whatever. And then they go and they meet their future life partner. There isn't even necessarily a need for a strategy there. If they had come in knowing that, your advice would be, or the card's advice would be really good advice, and really go by whatever the cards say, then they could predict that, something great would happen or something terrible would happen or whatever the cards say. So it kind of brings up, even if it's paranormal, it doesn't necessarily allow you to strategize, True.
And part of the reason is that the person being read, whose cards are being read, is not able to strategize because it's the reader giving the reading. And so if the reader is not giving that direction, then the person being read is not going to have any of that information. And it, as I said before, it would be extremely unethical for a tarot reader to give specific advice like that, because the cards don't say that stuff. And if they're getting that impression, they should be aware that, oh, you're going to meet somebody. And this person's going to be extremely important to you.
How about this? Consider, the thing with the cards placement, and we were talking about how it could, you could do any kind of thing. It's just about the reader. Let's say a person comes in and you play essentially a game of 20 questions. You do any number of sessions and you do 2 piles or, 2 spots. And based on what you think might be an interpretation of the results from reading the spots, then you refine it. You refine what you're asking until the point where you have something very specific.
I don't think the cards give you something very specific. It is the interpretation that, if there's any specificity at all, it's the interpretation. The cards are extremely vague.
How about this? Okay, let's say you do the standard set of cards, but you do it 50 times in a row. Is there any value to all 50 results?
I don't know, because it really matters about who's reading the cards. If you do them for yourself, it's I think a lot harder. However, there are lots of people who have tarot cards purely for the reason that every day they pull a card and they use that card as an inspiration for their day. And they are so vague that you can find inspiration every day. Out of you could pull the same card every day.
Yeah.
And you could apply it to that day, and it would be different because it's a different freaking day.
Yeah.
So I don't know. To answer your question, I have no idea. But I believe that there's something to it. And not
just generally useful and real, but like possibly.
Yes, I think that a good tarot card reader has a gift or a skill that is beyond. It's not cold reading. It's not just parroting what's in the book and saying what the meaning of the card is, because that's like reading as an astrology prediction out of the newspaper. It's pointless. But they have some insight into specifically the card in conjunction with the person and their circumstances. The insight may not be specific, but the correlation is specific. And I think that's where the gift or the skill comes in. Now, if somebody goes to a tarot card reader and they say, they start giving hints, I think that might actually confuse the situation more, because if somebody comes and says, man, I felt really awful and I'm really concerned that something's wrong and I don't know, I just really am worried about it. And then they get a card that implies a powerful man, the reader might assume that this is a doctor because this person has just talked about how sick they are. And so they interpret that as being, you should really go and see your doctor. When in reality, it could be their dad, or it could be, themselves. It could be a stand-in for the person themselves. And so I just think that there's a skill and there's a gift there, and it's not what you think it is, clearly not what you think it is.
Well, all I'm saying is that, okay, imagine if you're telekinetic. That means you can move things with your mind, whatever.
I want to be telekinetic.
And you use it to spin a little windmill thing, just like, 2 centimeters on a side, tiny. But you do it in such a way that you can gradually increase the amount of energy you're generating via the telekinetically moving the windmill until you've already generated a ton of energy. If you could train it any more, you could generate so much energy, you could start heating the planet up and like increasing the total amount of energy in the universe. Like, there's a reason why certain things, so like physics is based primarily on like conservation laws, like conservation of energy. If there was any source of energy besides the obvious one in the universe, we would see it, The
obvious one being the sun? The
obvious one actually being the dark energy, but I won't get into that.
Oh, God.
But if there was like, you took a infrared camera on a satellite and you just watched the surface of the planet, you saw one place heating up more than it should, you'd know there is something storing energy or something metaphysically generating energy. And the same thing is true for things that can look at the future or otherwise somehow know the real probabilities of things happening. If you can predict things, then you can start messing with things at a very fundamental level. And it may not be obvious certain strategies you can employ to do that. So like the thing about like you do so many sessions and you do 2 piles and you're asking questions, playing 20 questions. If you do that enough, even with vague things, you can get things that are very specific out of it.
Well, yeah, I'll buy that.
And so if you have a strategizer, somebody who's optimizing for certain things, like knowing the chances of them winning big at the lottery or whatever, then they can game certain things like that. Like, oh, they found a telekinetic. The most obvious thing is have them sit and generate electricity all day. For somebody who's psychic or clairvoyant or reads tarot cards, you have them sit with an officer in a military base all day predicting, you know what I mean?
Here's the part you don't get. People with gifts don't give a crap if anyone believes them. They just do it. They don't care if the officer watches them because it doesn't matter if you believe it or not. It does not matter one iota. So they're not going to do that because it interrupts your vibe.
In the off chance that they do that, then there you have a big issue, you know?
A big issue being?
A big issue being now you have somebody who can arbitrarily closely predict anything.
Okay.
But if you don't, like, again, there's the general and 100% guaranteed correct result, meaning from tarot card meaning, and then there's the very specific but potentially not real source of meaning. So the general but definitively 100% valuable and meaningful correct thing is you go to a tarot card reader, they read the cards, and it jostles your mind enough that you now can look at things differently. That's useful. Just generally, 100% that will happen. Doesn't need anything paranormal. But again, it's like if you say like this person can predict anything with no information, you know, no reason for them to know that, then there's other things problems that could come up. Like, again, if there's a hot spot on Earth, a ton of energy spilling out of this building, there's probably a telekinetic in there, you know, or some kind of crazy battery, or someone has developed a perpetual motion device, you know, and we definitely don't see that. And you would not want that, by the way. A perpetual motion device could end up like creating a huge amount of heat, destroying all sorts of stuff, completely exacerbating the buildup of entropy in the universe.
Okay.
Same thing with tarot card readers, or like the paranormal version.
A lot of tarot readers give such vague interpretations that they could apply to anyone. The gift or skill comes into play when you can see some specific thing. You lost a beloved pet recently, or the person you're involved with is being unfaithful to you. But you've got to be really careful if you say something like that because you could destroy someone's life. I have a bunch of different kinds of divination card sets which should be displaying if you're watching this on YouTube. If you want to try reading tarot or other divination cards, here's my advice. Try some different types. The most recognizable design is called Weight Rider, but you might find that another set appeals to you more.
Is that a name?
It's the, I believe it's the designer, and it's just a particular style. I don't have that set of cards. You should consult the meaning of the cards, which are probably in a book that came with the cards, but if it didn't come with a book, you have to go out and get one. And eventually, you'll start learning what the meanings are. I don't remember the meanings anymore. I have to look at a little cheat sheet. But even if you have to consult the book, don't rely on that alone. Let your mind wander while you do. And by wander, I really mean let your thoughts go blank and see what floats to the surface. And it's like a whispered thought or a dim mental picture or remembering a dream. Even if the meanings don't seem to fit or they seem too broad, keep a record of the reading. And it could be that when you look back from the future, the real future, not like a fake future, you'll find that they were accurate. And even if they aren't, like any skill, it takes practice. Our contact information is in the show notes. You can email us, text us, or even call and leave a 3-minute voicemail. And as always, if you have a story you want to tell, send it to us. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.
Dun, dun.